How a prisoner escaped Crown Point Jail in 1934 by going through the floor. True crime breakdown. The floor that swallowed a man. Before we go any deeper into this madness, make sure you subscribe, like, and drop a comment, because after this story, you'll question every prison escape you've ever heard. The morning the inmate vanished, Crown Ridge Jail woke to the sound of alarms ripping through the hallways. The concrete floors shook, metal doors slammed, and officers sprinted through the narrow corridors with terror in their eyes. For most inmates, it was a rude awakening. For the officers, it was something far worse. It meant someone had escaped. In the center of it all was cell B12, a small, aging concrete room that smelled of bleach and rust. Inside that cell, at least according to every official log, every head count, and every guard sworn to testify, had been Samuel Riker, a thief known mostly for charm, not violence. He had no gang ties, no disciplinary infractions, and no history of escape attempts. He was the kind of inmate prisons liked: quiet, compliant, invisible. But at 5:42 a.m., Samuel Riker became a ghost. Detective Mara Ellison arrived just after sunrise. She stepped into cell block B and felt an immediate shift in the air. Officers whispered instead of spoke. They avoided her eyes. Something about this scene was wrong before she even opened her notebook. Detective, Warden Caldwell greeted her stiffly. "Thank you for coming. We have a situation." Ellison peered into cell B12. The bed was neatly made. The blanket folded tight. The metal stool pushed exactly into place. Nothing chaotic, nothing broken. Except for the one thing that didn't belong there at all. A perfect circle of dust missing from the center of the floor, like something had been resting there for years and suddenly lifted away. Or like the floor itself had shifted around it. "Where's the point of exit?" Ellison asked. The guards exchanged glances. No one answered. She walked into the cell, knelt beside the dust ring, and pressed a gloved hand against the concrete. Concrete shouldn't feel warm. She stood. "Let me see the security footage." Caldwell swallowed. "Detective, that's the problem." He led her down the hallway to the control room. Screens lined the wall, each one glowing a sickly blue. Every camera in the prison was working except one, the camera directly facing cell B12. The screen was black. Not static. Not corrupted. Just perfectly, impossibly black. "This camera went offline at 2:13 a.m., Caldwell said quietly. Came back at 2:29. When it turned back on, he was gone. Ellison frowned. "System error?" "No," whispered Harding, the night guard. His voice trembled. "Ma'am, I swear, no one touched the controls. And we didn't hear a thing." Ellison rewound the footage surrounding the blackout. On a neighboring camera, she caught something. Just a single second of motion. A faint vibration traveling across the floor tiles outside the cell. It wasn't a person. It wasn't footsteps. It moved too smoothly, too silently, too precisely. "Do you have anyone in this facility capable of digging through concrete?" she asked. "No," Caldwell said. "And even if he did, we would have heard it. The floors are 12 inches thick." Ellison turned back toward the cell block, unease coiling inside her. "Then explain the dust ring." Caldwell hesitated, then finally said it. "We think the floor moved." "What do you mean moved?" "We found scrape marks inside the concrete, underneath the bed's metal frame. As if something had been sliding under the surface. But that floor hasn't been touched since 1928. Ellison's pulse quickened. She stepped back into cell B12. The faint warmth. The perfect dust circle. The silent camera blackout. A vibration caught on a distant lens. None of it made sense. Until she noticed something small, almost invisible, wedged beneath the edge of the concrete. A folded scrap of paper. She pulled it free, unfolded it slowly, and read the single line written in shaky pencil. "He didn't go up. He went down." The hair on her arms rose. And that was when a rookie guard burst through the hallway doorway, breathless and pale. "Detective!" "We opened the locked basement door." He swallowed hard. "And what we found down there changed everything. The basement that shouldn't exist." Detective Mara Ellison followed the rookie guard down the stairwell, her boots thudding against the old iron steps. The air grew colder with every level they descended. Crown Ridge was built in 1904, a labyrinth of stone and steel layered over decades, with rooms abandoned long before anyone working here was born. But this door, the one the rookie had opened, wasn't on any blueprint. When Ellison reached the bottom landing, she saw it. A thick iron door with peeling blue paint, a rusted padlock split clean down the center as if someone had twisted it apart by hand. Caldwell stood nearby, pale. This basement was sealed in 1953. There shouldn't be anything inside. No access points. No walkways. Then how did you open it? Ellison asked. The rookie swallowed. It was unlocked when I checked. Like someone wanted us to see what's inside. Ellison pushed the door fully open. A wave of cold air swept out, carrying the scent of earth and something older, like forgotten stone. She stepped inside, flashlight cutting beams through dust heavy enough to taste. The basement was enormous. Pillars lined the space, stretching into darkness. The walls were carved stone, older than the prison itself, like an underground chamber the facility had been built on top of. On the floor were deep grooves, smooth, curved, following a path that led deeper underground. As if something massive had been dragged, or had moved on its own. Harding pointed his light at the far wall. Detective, look. A section of the floor had collapsed into a circular opening, roughly the same diameter as the dust ring in cell B12. Ellison knelt at the edge. The concrete wasn't smashed or broken. It had been carved from below, leaving behind tool marks so perfectly spaced they almost looked like the teeth of a machine. But no machine had been down here. She checked the inner surface. Smooth. Polished. Warm, just like the floor in cell B12. Something had come up. From below. Ellison stared into the darkness of the hole. Get me a rope and floodlights. Caldwell stepped forward, voice trembling. Detective, with all respect, you don't know what's under there. That's exactly why I need to look, she said. If Riker vanished through the floor, his exit point is down here. Harding leaned closer to the pit edge. But how could a man dig upward through 12 inches of reinforced concrete without sound? Without tools? Without breaking anything? Ellison didn't answer. The scraping marks inside the hole weren't from a shovel. They were from something thin, sharp, and incredibly precise, almost surgical. When she stood, her flashlight caught something half buried in dirt near the pit. She knelt and brushed it off. A shoe. A prison-issued shoe, its laces torn out, the heel bent, the fabric stiff with dust. Inside it was something else, a folded scrap of cloth, stitched with a number. B12. Samuel Riker's number. Her pulse quickened. She opened the cloth, expecting a message, a symbol, something. Instead, there was only a single fingerprint smudged across the fabric. But what made her freeze wasn't the print itself. It was its orientation. Human fingerprints swirl outward from the center. Their ridges curve in familiar patterns. This fingerprint ran in a perfect spiral, tighter and tighter toward the center, like a drill pattern. Something about it was wrong. Harding whispered, Detective, we need to leave. Before she could respond, her radio crackled violently. A panicked voice from control screamed through static. Detective Ellison, we've got movement, B-block hallway. Something just crawled under the floor, moving fast, heading straight toward your location. Everyone in the basement froze. A deep rumble vibrated beneath their boots. Dust fell from the ceiling. Pipes rattled. The floor under the pit's edge began to shift, slowly, silently, like something was pressing upward. Harding stumbled backward. It's coming up. It's coming up. Caldwell grabbed Ellison's arm. Detective, we have to close that door. But Ellison held her ground, eyes fixed on the rising swell of concrete. Not yet, she whispered. The rumbling grew. The dust ring widened. The concrete flexed, like skin stretched from below. Then, with a soft, sickening crack, a hand emerged. Thin. Dust-covered. Fingers longer than normal. Nails blunt, scraped down. The hand gripped the edge of the floor and pulled. Something was climbing out. Something that had been waiting beneath the prison for decades. Ellison took one step back. Whatever Samuel Riker had become, whatever had taken him, was coming through the floor. And then, just as the creature's head broke the surface, everything in the basement went black. The man who should not have survived. Everything went dark. The basement lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Only the faint glow of distant emergency lamps bled blue across the stone pillars. A roar of static burst through Ellison's radio before it, too, fell silent. For one suspended heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then something shifted in the darkness. A slow exhale. A scrape against concrete. A sound like bone bending where bone shouldn't bend. Ellison raised her flashlight, but the beam sputtered, barely a thin whisper of light. It caught just enough to reveal the emerging figure pulling itself up from the hole. Not a creature. Not a monster. A man. Or the shape of one. Samuel Riker, or something wearing his outline, rose from the pit, dust falling off his shoulders like ash. His frame was thinner, almost stretched. His limbs longer. His eyes reflecting the faint blue light in a way that made his face look hollowed out, emptied of something human. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Didn't speak. He simply stared at Ellison. Caldwell whispered, "Dear God?" Slowly, impossibly, Riker lowered himself to all fours, fluid, silent, and began to crawl across the concrete with a motion that looked practiced, efficient, almost mechanical. His limbs moved independently, flowing like joints had been broken and reset in new directions. Harding dropped his flashlight. "He's not walking right, Detective, he's not." "Back up," Ellison commanded, voice steady despite the cold flooding her veins. "Do not turn your back." But Harding did. Fear overtook training. He stumbled toward the stairs. Riker's head tilted sharply, too sharply, tracking the motion like prey. Then he moved. Not fast. Not frantic. Just impossibly quiet. A blur of motion cutting across the dust. A whisper of limbs skimming the floor. He passed Harding without touching him, without even looking at him, and positioned himself between the group and the exit. Blocking them. Trapping them. Ellison kept her gaze locked on him. "Riker," she said carefully. "What happened to you? How did you get below the prison?" His head twitched at the sound of his name. His jaw clenched then unclenched. When he finally spoke, the voice that came out was soft, rasping, as if it had traveled miles through stone. "I followed the others." Ellison's breath caught. "Others?" He nodded slowly. Caldwell whispered, "There are more?" Riker's arms folded beneath him, body lowering until he seemed to melt into the floor. "Many." The ground trembled. Not violently. Not dangerously. Just enough to feel like something was shifting under the concrete. Ellison's flashlight flickered again. The beam caught the edges of movement, tiny cracks forming near the pillars. Dust blooming upward. The earth pulsing beneath their boots like a heartbeat. Harding stumbled backward. "Detective, we've got to get out, now." Riker's eyes locked onto Ellison's. Then he said the words she would never forget. "They woke up when I fell." Her voice stayed calm, but her pulse hammered. "What woke up?" Riker turned his head toward the hole he had climbed through. "The ones below." The floor behind him cracked. A long, thin fissure. Then another. And another. Something was moving beneath the basement. Multiple somethings. Ellison made her decision. "Everyone out, now." She shoved Caldwell toward the exit, grabbed Harding by the collar, and ran. The tunnels shook behind them. Dust exploded from the ceiling. A deep groaning sound surged up from below, like ancient stone being forced open. They reached the door. Ellison slammed it shut. Caldwell locked it. Harding braced it with his shoulder. On the other side came the sound of nails, or fingers, dragging across the metal. Not one set. Many. Dozens. Then silence. The basement was sealed again within hours. Within days, federal authorities took over the case. Within weeks, the entire prison was evacuated. But no agency ever released a report. No lab ever identified the fingerprint. And no security footage of the basement was ever made public. Years later, Detective Mara Ellison still wakes at 2:13 a.m., the exact minute cell B12's camera went black. Because sometimes, in the quiet darkness of her apartment, she hears it again. That faint, crawling vibration traveling across the floorboards beneath her feet. The same one she heard the morning Samuel Riker vanished. And she remembers his final warning. I didn't go up. I went down. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.